if you think about it, the same things that we were just talking about, where you're in a situation and you're stuck and you need to be delivered.
Mm-hmm.
God, if you get me out of this, I'll never do it again.
Right,
that type of thing, right?
Right.
If that happens and then you get out of it and you move on, and you tend to forget about God, forget about the example, forget about what you learned, and then you find yourself in another crack,
right?
And you back at it, right?
Right.
And it's that short-term memory loss, if you will, right?
Right,
I think
right,
that's a heart of pride and selfishness. But the other thing with that is, we experience that now, and men have been men since the beginning of creation.
Right.
There's when sin entered in, there's always sin. There's always a something that's a twisted bent. So for Aaron to do something like that, I think that he also would have some jealousy. He also would have the ability to forget about God, to forget about to not try to like undercut his, when they say cut his brother's knees out from underneath him type of thing.
Right. So that was so to sum up what we said before we started recording. This series that I'm watching on Exodus is talking about that exact thing that you're talking about, which is when the Israelites got free from Egypt. Moses, then all the Israelites was free, and they was like, "Yo, this is dope, right? Get free us from these Egyptians. This is terrible." They were begging to God, and then God freed them, right? And they saw a miracle, like something that nobody had ever seen. So it's like, okay,
the miracle of the Red Sea opening.
Exactly. So you're thinking like, people always talking about, yo, I need to see a miracle. I need to see a miracle. Then they saw a miracle, and then they still forgot about God. So the story talks about when Moses goes up he goes up to Mount Sinai. He's talking to God, right? And he's communing with God. God's glory is so intense that Moses actually had to cover his face.
Turn his face from.
Which we can go into a whole 2-hour discussion about that. But I want to keep it relevant to what you were talking about when you first walked in. And so while Moses is up there talking to God on behalf of the Israelites are down at the bottom of Mount Sinai scheming like, yo, where'd Moses go? I guess he must be gone. Oh well, hey, remember that Red Sea thing? Yeah, no, not really, I don't remember that. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because you think like you were talking about, like how we forget like our sin nature, our natural human proclivity to go to the lowest possible effort, right? As opposed to going to the highest possible effort and pushing ourselves. We fall to our kind of what I would call our animalistic nature, which is survival. I just want to eat. I want to have sex. I want to spend money, live lasciviously, and not really like plan for the future, which is a very basic animalistic need. And I tend to believe that God calls us to be higher than just our animal nature. Like in the Bible, they call it our sin nature, our flesh nature, right? So the funny thing about this story, they're down at Mount Sinai, minding their business, talking about they forgot about Moses or whatever. So Aaron, who I think is an opportunist, that's just me. I think Aaron, who I think was jealous of Moses because he's like, yo, my brother's getting all the shine and I'm like second in command or whatever. So when Moses leaves, he's like, oh, bet, let me take this. The people complaining. He's like, oh, well, instead of like we were talking about him, like you said, him sticking to what he knew to be right. He fell to the whims of the crowd.
Of the crowd, right.
Of the masses. He did not stand up for what he believed in, what he knew to be true, and he fell to the peer pressure of, yo, we need a God, Aaron. Like, God left us out here. Moses left us out here to die. We need something. So Aaron was like, all right, well, I'll tell you what. Y'all take everybody's jewelry from your wives. Let's melt it down. We're going to create this golden calf, right? Which is an echo of the Egyptian worship when they used to worship objects, which really that wasn't them worshiping objects. It was them worshiping gods, and the objects
represented,
right? Like Christians, when they go to church, they don't worship the church. They go to church as a way to commune with God. So they built this golden calf, and then Moses comes down. Moses comes down from the mountain, right? He's like, "Yo, what's the deal? Like, what are y'all doing? We just went through this. Like, didn't we just go through this?"
They forgot,
and they forgot.
And you know what I think is the one thing I've learned, and it's one of those things, like, I'm a firm believer that the sooner you learn a certain thing, the less often you have to continue to find yourself in an environment that requires that you learn the thing. Right? If you keep finding yourself in a certain situation over and over, you obviously haven't learned.
Right.
right?
Like a video game, you got to do that level again.
Yeah, repeat, right? And it's like the more and more and I take that from my wife. You know, we have conversations. I take that from even just examples where it's just me and my time in the Word, meditation, prayer, all like the more and more have the same conversation or keep running to the same situations, I'm like, boy, you ain't learned yet. And I don't need I don't and but I would say this, the older I get and the more my ear gets tuned to the voice of God, the less I need somebody else to tell me that you haven't learned yet. The more I begin to recognize, Marcus, you back in the same situation again. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
it's too. It may not be exact, but it's too similar for it to not be the thing.
Right.
If I change and make that small tweak, that make that small adjustment, I more than likely won't be in the same situation again. And I think when I look at life as it was back then, we look at life as it is now. We find ourselves in situations where people have been with us for such a long time, and we have our movement. You have the Dan Wheeler movement. I call it that. You've been on this journey. You've been teaching the same things. You've gotten better and refined your process, but you haven't really changed the foundation. You haven't changed the core of who you are and how you do what you do. And if there was someone that was with you and has seen you go through the ups and downs, and then 10 years later in the business, you still have an issue with them trusting you, you trusting them, like, I haven't done anything different.
You know, and I think that's a valuable point. It kind of goes to so then Aaron Moses comes down, he gets ticked off, he breaks the very tablets that God had created, right? The 10 Commandments.
I'm gonna have to go.
Breaks it in half.
You're making me have to go back and look at it and
like,
make sure I'm tight. I'm not challenging.
No, I know. You know, I was quizzed on this as a kid, so like for me, it's like, oh, this is my wheelhouse right
Sunday
here. Like,
school.
Sunday school. Like we used to have to find the books of the Bible, and like whoever could find it the fastest would get like some type of prize or something like that. Not really a prize, just like the pride of knowing that you were faster.
How many did you win?
So he comes down, he sees them worshiping. Moses comes down from Mount Sinai after communing with God. He sees the Israelites worshiping this golden calf. Right after they just got out of Egypt, he gets mad. He breaks the tablets in half, splits them in two, and Aaron's like, "Yo, I don't know where that came. I don't know where that came from. Like, hey, look, all I know is we put this wood, I mean, we put this gold into the fire, and boom, a calf came out. I don't know how it got. I don't know how." Like, oh, so you put the gold into the fire, and then out came a calf, right? Okay,
the wood just laid there,
and
the fire just showed up.
The fire just showed up,
and then somehow the jewelry just magnetically.
So that little small part right there kind of goes to like, when do we, as humans, it's like when people make these ghost apologies where it's like, hey, I'm sorry if what I said offended you, right? As opposed to, I'm sorry for what I said. Yeah. They go, hey, if that offended you, I'm sorry, which is kind of like, it's a very, it's close, right?
But it ain't.
It's kind of a passive aggressive way, exactly, of not taking responsibility. And so Aaron does kind of a similar thing, right? And so then Moses gets mad. He goes back to God and he's like, yo, these people is tripping, like. And then God's like, all right, bet, I'm gonna kill all these Bama's. And then Moses is like, wait. He's like, nah, you ain't gotta do all that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You ain't gotta do all that. Like, maybe we could just like start over again. So then they redo. So the 10 Commandments actually had two versions. There was one version that Moses broke in half, and then there was a second version where they had to recommit themselves back to the original commitment with God. Mm-hmm. So he had to go back and do it all over again, like you just said, which is how many like times in our life, like you said, we find ourselves in the same situation over and over again, whether it's money, whether it's relationships, where we just got delivered out of Egypt. Mm-hmm. We going through a desert, everything's chill, and then we have this need, this desire to worship something. And you say, okay, well, I'm atheist and I don't worship anything. I don't believe in any type of God. Well, of course you do. You have some type of God. There's something that you put first, something that matters to you, whether it's, TikTok, whether it's your phone, whether it's food. Maybe you worship food. Maybe you worship yourself. Maybe you're
I'm a poke. I'm going to cut you off, but I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah.
I'm a poke. So are you saying that there's no such thing as a person, there's no atheist? Or are you saying like everybody has a belief in something?
I'm saying everybody has something that they idolize.
Y'all may not realize how we got on this, but and I don't know if we'll tell how we got on this, but we on it. This is the wire for today. This is episode
Welcome to
23.
the real estate wire, folks. Everybody has something that they idolize. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with. So whether you say you so that being said, it becomes to the quick because we were talking about this series that I'm watching, and it begs the question: well, is what you're serving, is it benefiting you, or is it dragging you into a life of hedonistic chaos?
Um, just to make it clear, you have no idea how this is a full circle moment for me. I have not talked to you much this week. A couple times about clients and whatever.
About business, right?
But I was just on the phone with my mentor yesterday talking about my revelation, so to speak, that I've come into over the last 7 to 10 days. This week, I've been talking about it with my wife. Sunday, it was preached about, and there was some things revealed to me from Pastor June. Shout out to Pastor June. Like he was talking about like revival and whatnot. Not the revival that we would be at all week long, right?
Yeah, I got you.
but then even like last Friday, when I left here last Friday, like I was on the phone, like fixing, the issue on that one loan. And bro, like one of the things that I've come to realize is that I've made more of an idol of the things, right? Of the things that this business provides, right? The accolades, the money is never really, just so that y'all know, and I can speak for you, money ain't at the top of the list for us.
Sure.
Right. It is. I think it's a benefactor of what we do.
Right.
It's it is a good benefit, but like really serving is you grew up in a household of service, right? And I think like entwined in our DNA is the requirement to serve. It's just we're just bent towards that. But I was thinking about the money that comes out of it, the accolades, the opportunities. There's some juice that comes from the energy that comes from being in this business. And I'm like, man, like I focus on relationships more than all the things that are provided through this business. But I've not made my focus and my affection and put that on the provider.
Yeah.
So if I rely on Dan for my business, if Dan ever feel like, oh, I'm just gonna take some months off because you've done well, I'm like, I'm gonna take 6 months off, and I rely on you and 10 other realtors that might do the same thing, then that changes everything for me. But you getting clients and referring to me, that don't come from you. God provides that.
Right.
So I've learned, and here's one of those things of like, yo, over time I've seen this happen in my life. It's just like and I was talking to my mentor yesterday. I was like, I realized over this last week, like there's something about me that had that Israelite thing.
Yeah.
Because when you get into a situation, God get me out. I need some blessings. I need da.
Right.
Everything go good. I ain't talking to God. I ain't really focusing as much. Right. And then things get a little tight. God, get me out of this little.
You talking now, brother?
You know what I'm saying?
That'll preach,
bro. It's the so
Yeah.
and I think that all of us have that Israelite heart a lot of times because we witness miracles in our business.
Yeah.
The renovation situation that we went through.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of miracle stuff in it. Like because people finding you.
Yeah.
You are some people's miracles, right? Because I got my parents' house. I got this thing. I don't know. I got these papers coming at me. So God gave you the knowledge and giving you wisdom about how to navigate through this. And then people coming to you, which is coming from God. And then you help them get delivered from the situation that they no way could get out of by themselves.
Dude, here's one thought that I get from one of my teachers, Rav Berg. And he says, most people think, oh, I leave my house and I'm driving down the street on the highway or whatever. And a car almost hits me and almost get into a car accident. And they go, oh, man, that's great. That was a miracle. Like I almost got into a car accident. Thank God I didn't. Or even worse, I get into a car accident and, oh, thank God I didn't die. I'm alive. I'm healthy. I'm well. That was a miracle. Can't believe it, right? And most people look for those types of miracles. And we never, as humans, we never consider hmm, the fact that I just drove down the street and arrived to my destination incident free
Mm-hmm.
is a miracle. But we don't look at that as a miracle because something drastic didn't happen,
Right.
right? In order to wake us up to say, I'm alive. Like, that's great. Like, every single day is what we would call a miracle, right? Because you're still breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to me. One thing you triggered where you said the revelations. I was talking to my wife about this one day, which I think now that I'm in my 40s, I've had. I'm on my. I'm calling this one my. I think this is my third revelation or my fourth revelation. My first revelation was when I was around 17 or 18, and then I realized that everything that everybody told me wasn't necessarily true. That to me was like a big aha moment. Then I kind of went on a journey. Then once I turned around 29 or 30, I had another revelation when I realized that, hey, a lot of things that I'm pretty much the creator of everything that's around me right now, right? Every single thing that's happened in my life thus far has been the sum of every single decision I've ever made, right? Hasn't been any outside forces or something that's come to like thwart me. No, I could pretty much track down every single thing that I've ever done or that's ever happened to me to a decision that I made. If I made a left turn down the street and I got mugged, I chose to make the left turn down the street. Was I responsible for getting mugged? No, of course not. But there were still these steps that I went, that I took, that I consciously chose. So that was my second revelation. And my third revelation happened when my son was born around a couple, and it's still being revealed, right? Which is the revelation that I don't know everything. It's crazy. Like, I thought right, like, wow. So that word that you triggered, you said revelations, is like, oh yeah. That's interesting. And then the third point that you pointed out to me that I thought was the third thing you said that I thought was very interesting was about that Israel mind, which kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, where you said this sin nature, which I would say is akin to that Israel mindset or that animalistic like base level desire that we are all born with, right? Yeah. I use this word, and I think a lot of people take it negatively, but I'm going to say it anyway. Then I'm going to explain how I look at it. And the word is selfish. And to me, I think most people say, "Oh, selfish is a bad thing," but I don't really particularly agree with selfishness being a bad thing all the time.
Correct. Right? I'm in agreement that selfishness is not a bad thing all the time.
Right. I think you would say it depends on the spirit. I would say it depends on the intention. It depends on your motive. My son is the most selfish person I've ever met in my entire life. And I love him.
It's all about him.
It's all about him. And my whole house is constructed to make his life better. We've been to his will. He is the pack leader. Neo, you are the pack leader. I submit to your will, right? Papa's still in charge, but you the pack leader. Okay, I let you go as far as you're going to go. And then after a while, it's like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah. But I consider myself, and I was having a discussion with somebody on the Facebook about this. Well, two discussions that I was having. One discussion I was having was with a good friend of mine named Bryant Adams, who is BK Adams, who painted this artwork right here. He's a prolific artist, painter, and he was talking about exactly what you were talking about, which is the source of everything, right? Where once he realized that he's not doing any of it, his life got so much, and he's always been really good at manifesting money and wealth and abundance. That's never been an issue for him ever since he was like 19 years old. He's always been good at creating money. That's like a secondary thing. It's like, okay, yeah, of course. For some people, they never like really get to that level, and then everybody to varying degrees. But that's always been a breeze for him, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was telling me that he was like, yo, the moment he's like, it's not me, yo. It's all God. I'm just here, and I just follow the voice of God. That's what he was telling me. The other conversation that I was having was with a young lady on the Facebook, and it was about, beating our kids and abusing our kids, and she calls it spanking, she calls it popping, she calls it all these different euphemisms for physically causing violence against children, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever you want to call that, if you want to call it spanking, we can call it. If you want to call it popping, you want to call it whipping, you want to call it pinching, you want to call it punching, you want to call it throwing down the stairs, you want to call it burning. Whatever physical tool you're using to discipline your children, I put all that in the same box of abuse. Okay. Now, there's also mental abuse, there's emotional abuse, and there's physical abuse. Okay. So the only question in my mind is to what degree. And it goes back to what you were saying, which is, I think these trauma patterns that we kind of push from from our childhood, and I was raised, that was the way I was raised, and I turned out fine. But did you turn out fine though? Like, do you gaslight people? Are you
fine?
Define fine.
Yeah, fine.
Like,
Fine. You can define.
are you surviving?
Every person can have a level of wisdom and unto themselves, as well as they can be fine based upon how they define fine. Just like you can have success based upon how you define it.
Sure. I mean, some people's success is living under a bridge. Like,
yeah,
hey, at least I'm not living in a gutter. Okay.
At least I ain't living at home.
At least I'm not. Right. You live at home with your mom. Well, at least I'm not on the street. Oh, okay. Right. So, to me, it's about what are we passing down to our kids, and what patterns are we teaching our kids. So for me, realizing that, hey, I don't really know everything, I think was a part of that third revelation. I'm interested to see what the fourth revelation is, because you
gonna have fourth, fifth. You gonna have many of them, and the longer you live, the more will be revealed. And not everybody is a believer in Jesus like myself, and you grew up in the church and you understand the matter of the sin nature, and we all have it. Right, we're all bent towards the no. Like, you ain't got to teach Neo no.
Right,
I ain't have to tell you no. I was born with a no.
Yeah,
but then, like, that's my will.
Yeah,
because I'm not getting my way. So when somebody else, were my parents trying to get me to not go close to the steps, because if I go too close to the steps, I'm not skilled enough to navigate walking down the steps without falling.
Right.
So they say no, and I'm probably like no back, and as soon as you take that, and now they got to snatch you back. Right. That's the being said. So, like, even in life, as you get older, there's somebody around you, and you should have somebody around you that can tell you no. And if you can't be told no, for your own good, like, I think you got a problem.
The funny thing is,
not everybody knows everything.
When I was looking into, when I turned 29, got into real estate, and I was like, oh yeah, bet I'm not gonna have no bosses. I'm tired of bosses. I don't want people telling me what to do. Da 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 da. And then I realized I got more bosses now than I did when I was a nurse at Walter Reed.
Tell me about that from a realtor perspective.
So let me tell you who's my boss. One, my broker's not really my boss. My broker's my partner. My clients are my boss, because if they tell me they want to do something, well, okay, I'm going to do it. Now, again, I have experience, so I always tell my clients, like, look, I'm the expert, but you're the boss.
Okay.
Tell me what you want to do, and I'm going to tell you if that's something reasonable or not, right? But it's up to you, and ultimately you have the final decision. And if I think it's a really stupid idea and you want to do it anyway, well, then we're going to do the stupid thing. Let it fall through. Like, for example,
I think I might steal that. I'm the expert.
I steal it because I stole it from somebody else.
I'm the expert, but you the boss.
I'm the expert, but you're the boss. I'm giving you my 11, 12 years of experience, right? So you're not just paying for one time. You're paying for the entire 10 years of experience, the over 150 transactions that I've done, DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Yeah.
You're paying for that experience, and that's what you're getting. So if you say, well, I think it should be done this way because I saw something on TikTok. Okay, cool. Well, let's try it. How'd that work? Oh, it didn't work at all. Okay, great. Or, yo, actually it worked great. Dan, you were wrong. Oh, yeah, you're right. I was wrong. I'm glad we didn't do it my way. Right?
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Like, my wife says that a lot of times, I was just talking about no, the word no, right? And she says, when I bring up stuff, like, you quick to say no, or like not really, like really be into it. I'm like, and I had to pause. I'm like, I wanted to say, no, I'm not like that. But she's like, you never say, or you're slower to say, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Right. And I'm trying to get better at it.
For sure.
Because a lot of times I can just hear stuff, and the no is like, I'm in a different thought space right now. I ain't thinking about that, right? And it's not a negative thing towards her. It's just like, I'm just not there right now. And even when I say that to say that when I hear clients bring up things like they see on TikTok, I was reading something today about a guy said, here's what you need to make to be able to afford a $500,000 home. And he started doing the math, and I'm looking at that thing, and my first thought was, Nah, dude, that's so sloppy to kind
Right,
of bring it up
right.
like that. So when people come up, in my or clients or potential clients say, "I saw this on TikTok, I saw this on Facebook, I saw this wherever," I look at it and I'm like, "Nah, that's not how you do that."
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing I think that
I want to kind of change. I think a little bit, or at
yeah,
least be a little bit slower to come to that. No, I think.
right. I think that's, and quite frankly, I've been working on that myself. um, for a while, I've been working on that, and I think the easiest way, I'll put it this way, because I had that revelation that I'm not always right, and that didn't happen until my kid was born. It took me a while to be like, okay, let me think about that for a second, and then let me sit with that, right? Because I agree with you 100%. There's been times where and my wife, I mean, she's the perfect compliment to me because I'm very, very. If you hadn't noticed, I'm very adamant in my views. Like if
They
I
don't. They
believe
don't know
something,
that. They don't know that
if you
yet.
hadn't noticed it, I'm very adamant, right? If I believe something, I'm going to say that that's what I believe.
Shout out to Mrs. Wheeler.
Yeah, shout out to Mrs. Wheeler. Oh yeah, she's Mrs. Wheeler. The black
Not
and
your
white for
mama.
me is just very. I don't know. I'm like my mom. It's very black and white for me for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see a lot more gray. And so you're exactly right, and I think that's a very interesting critique that your wife made, because I tend to do in the past. I do the same thing. Even now, I still do. Where it's like my first thought is to reject the idea that's coming in.
Yeah.
Right. One thing they teach us in sales is you're the most persuadable. You're the most persuasive rather when you're able to be persuaded.
You're the most persuasive.
Right. When you're able to be persuaded, when if you're having a conversation, a one-on-one conversation with a person, and you guys are presenting ideas to each other, maybe those ideas conflict, or maybe they're asymmetrical, or maybe they line up a little bit but not 100%, and that person who's presenting the idea to you feels heard, right? Then just by the law of reciprocity, they're going to then hear what you have to say. Right? It's just a psychological, it's just what we do.
And after I slowed it down and thought about it, I was like, so you're most persuasive when you're able to be persuaded. So the way that I thought about that really quick was if I can be persuaded, and we're going to keep it in the proper context of positive,
Sure.
right? Because there is negative persuasion out there. But
For sure.
if Dan can positively persuade me to a greater level of thinking or acceptance or whatever, then when I go to the next person, I'm even more informed,
Right?
And I'm better for that next person, for the next group of people, whatever. Because now is that what I'm giving to them is not just my own thoughts and my own process, and I've now gathered something from you positively, internalized that, and now I'm able to pass it on.
Yeah,
that's a good. Who said that?
I kind of just made that up.
You lie.
No, I mean that the way I don't know how to say.
You said you had a training, right?
No, not just I've never heard it that like you're most persuasive. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that's an aggregation of like pretty much the entire thought behind that. But you're the most persuasive when you're able to be persuaded. The reason is everything I just said, and if you're trying to get somebody to your point of view, kind of piggybacking off of what your wife said, it's easier to start from a place of commonality, right? So if she says, I think the grass is blue, okay, I can see why I can see why you might think that, right? Yeah. Who knows? Maybe she's got a physiological disorder where the cones in her eyes, lead her to not be able to perceive green. Are we gonna sit here and argue about something she's physiologically incapable of doing? Like, no, of course not. Hey, and then ultimately, is that important? Like, are we going to sit here and argue over minutia about the color of the grass when the house is burning down? Like, so I think figuring out where the commonalities are is way easier, especially in relationships, than it is to figure out where the differences are, because the differences are infinite, right? We could always find ways to disagree, but at the end of the day, like, does that bring like peace?
Bro, let me tell you something. All you all in my inbox right now. So, when I'm gonna talk about it. Matter of fact, I don't care. When COVID, was out, and you had some people that were vax, non-vax.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were, one side of it. There was always opposing views of
Yeah.
all of it, and
Yeah.
there's opposing views to every single thing, right?
Right.
One of the things that I've always been cool with is people's perspective, and what they want to do is their
Mm-hmm.
perspective and what they want to do. That's what you want to do. Like what? Like,
Right.
because on the flip side, what I want to do is what I want to do. My perspective, and guess what? You can't do. You can't move Marcus Fields. If I'm where I'm at, I'm where I'm at until I'm ready to not be there.
Dude, think how hard it is to change yourself. Now try to do that to other people.
Right. And then I
change
started
other people.
Listen, then I started to feel some type of way because I feel there's an attempt at manipulation towards for your personal. I'm like, and then we started getting to something else. So
yeah.
So one thing I was telling her, I was like, with family and friends, and we have a large tribe, so to speak, and my mother-in-law calls it her nation.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we have a large group of people that we're around and connected to. So some were on one side of this, some were on the other side, and friends were here, family was here. It was
Yeah.
And I would say, you know what? And here's a point of revelation. I was been reading my Bible and just praying, and we have time at home and time together, and it's frustrating and whatever. And I said, you know what? Out of all this drama, I said, there's many, many reasons to stay divided. We can find so many reasons to stay divided. But the effort shouldn't be put there. The effort should be put in finding ways to remain united.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly believe that in every situation that I have to find a way to remain united with the people that I should remain united
Dude, that's
with.
Exactly right. I agree with that.
Because you can't stay connected and tight and locked in arms and with everybody, right? There's toxic behavior. There's all these things, other things, but still try to find the way.
Right.
And if you, after having gone through the process or processes of discovery to find ways to remain united, sometimes it is better for us to part ways, lovingly.
Yeah.
But if you can find a way to remain united, you're much better together.
Dude, so the conversation I was having with the young lady on the Facebook, right? And it to me, it was just really sad. And I say that cautiously, but it was just sad because I could just hear like the trauma, the trauma, I was basically making a very factual, what I consider to be a factual base and based on my own opinion, right? It was just anecdotal. Basically what I was telling, like, hey, spankings didn't do it for me. It actually did the opposite of what they were trying to do. It made me a liar. I just figured out a better way to figure out how to do what I'm going to do. Because if I'm good, it's like this. If my parents say, you're going to get a spanking, whether you tell the truth or if you lie, we're going to spank you even more. Well, then I'll just take my chances on not getting caught. Because if I tell you the truth,
and come up with a real good lie that sounds like the truth.
I'm just going to, it made me a better liar.
Bro.
At a young age, that's devastating to your development if your foundation is lying.
Tiff, didn't we just talk about this?
Really? So I was having a conversation with her, and I was just basically telling her what it did for me because I've gone through therapy. I'm attempting to work my way through it, right? And everybody's got their own childhood story. Mine ain't different, but I'm just explaining that. I'm like, and then there's studies that show how detrimental whipping your kids is, or beating your kids, or having a punishment-based parenting style is not what I choose to do with my children, right? Because I know how damaging it was to me and what studies say the damage is to other humans that exist, right? And she was kind of just defending her point of view. Okay, cool. Do whatever you want to do with your kids. I don't really care. She tagged me in a post. I didn't even reach out to her. She tagged me. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to respond. You're going to get the smoke. Like, what you think? I'm not going to give you the smoke? If you tag me, I'm going to say what I got to say.
Today.
I got time. I had a little bit of time. I was on the toilet. I'm like, okay, I got time. You know what I'm saying? Say what you got to say. And so to me, like I said, especially when you do the Facebook stuff, I know you've talked about this, the social media back and forth.
Yeah. I hate it.
I tend to avoid it for the most part, but at the same time, I do keep it respectful. I rarely, if ever, go after somebody personally, right?
Sometimes you got to buck, though.
Yeah, I mean, with ad hominems, and that's the problem with black men, and I was like, oh, what did black men have to do? It sounds So then it started unleashing all this trauma.
You started realizing that
She's hurt by someone that wasn't me, because it was like, well, that y'all men. And I was like, how did men get involved in this? I was just saying what happened to me, and then just giving you some fact-based empirical data that you could easily Google and see that I'm correct. And if you still don't want to take that into consideration when you're beating your kids, then that's fine. But I believe that that's going to continue the cycle of trauma, where, I'm just like, okay, you turn out fine, great. But do you emotionally manipulate people? When people criticize you, do you take it personally? Do you think they're attacking you or the idea? Can you hold two ideas in your mind at the same time that are conflicting? Can you see multiple points of view? Or do you just have an authoritarian mindset that says, if you don't agree with me, you're the enemy? Sounds like a spanking culture to me, because if you think that everybody who's saying something that you don't agree with is condemning you, that's a terrible mindset to have. It comes from constantly getting spanked and getting beat by your parents who are condemning you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's like, anybody who does something that I don't agree with, they deserve to be punished. And now that we're older, it turns into gaslighting, manipulation. It turns into withdrawal of love. Do we manipulate our partners by threatening to withdraw our love and affection if they don't do what we want them to do? That's spanking culture, because your parents spanked you and put you in your room and withdrew their love from you.
I think it's, and I hear that, and I haven't done any research on the spanking culture, so I can't really tap into what you're saying, or debate or anything like that. But I will say, I think that out of what I heard you just say, there's a lot of, it goes way deeper than that. I think that's because the spanking, I don't even know how we got on this now.
I don't know.
But like, I think there's an element of proper discipline, the biblical discipline, and
see, that for me, don't mean to interrupt you. I think that's the only reasoning that she has. The Bible told me to do it. Yeah. Which the Bible did not tell you to whip your kids with a belt.
There's a way of disciplining.
They say the Bible says, spare not the rod of discipline. Rod is a metaphor. And you know why? Because you don't use a rod to beat your kids. If you're going to follow the Bible literally, where's your rod? Why are you using a belt? Why are you using your hand? Why are you punching them? Why are you pinching them or spanking them?
There is a way of administering biblical discipline.
Dude, I'm very passionate about that. The rod, so
and I'm not even talking about the physical. I'm not even talking about the physical, but I mean, because discipline is not just physical.
Discipline comes from the word disciple, which means to teach. So that's it. That's discipline. So if you're disciplining your child by hitting them with a belt or a rod or a brick or whatever you're hitting them with, right?
You need to go to jail. Like, if you're doing all that,
I ain't say it.
But if you're doing all that, I say it.
Her stance was, well, I don't leave marks on my kid. You don't leave marks on your kids? That's what you're bragging about?
The ones,
good for you.
And the ones that are the most evident are the ones that you can't see.
Dude, that's like me. So let's shift it. Let's say I don't beat my wife that much. I don't leave marks on her. I only beat her when she needs it, because 100 years ago that was perfectly reasonable. You just give your wife a little smack. That's John Wayne. Just give your wife a little smack. Sometimes, I don't know how old you guys are, but if you just hop on Google and go Google the honeymooners, you can see that was a part of the culture.
Jackie Gleason.
Jackie Gleason, where he would go, on a clock, and he'd be like, and it was like a joke. Like he was threatening to beat his wife on national TV. And that was accepted in our culture, to beat your wife. Now it's completely unacceptable.
Yeah, he'd be canceled.
Yeah, but back then it was like, well, what are you going to do? You can't have your wife running around here having her own opinions. Yeah, you got to smack her around a little bit.
But where did he get that from? He got that from seeing that growing up, right?
Correct.
And that was acceptable in the, let's say if Jackie Gleason was 1960s, and then the generation before that might have been 1920s and 1930s.
Yep.
Then between that generation and 1930s.
Yep.
Then between that generation and
women were considered your property. Yes. And now in 2023, some people still consider their children property, as if they own these humans, and therefore they have the right to do whatever they want, to completely destroy their own personal autonomy. They get to tell them what to do what they want to do. And if you don't listen to me, you're going to get that whooping. And I don't care. You can raise your kids because I'm raising a black child. okay, like
Yeah,
it's still abuse.
and you're instilling fear,
What are
and
we
you're
instilling?
yeah, you're instilling fear, and you're there's emasculation in there. You know, from
Ooh,
a man's perspective, there's also, if you got little girls watching, you got little girls that you're teaching how to. Boy, we about. I'm in
say
my.
it. Yeah,
So
I know what you.
you got little girls that you are watching this example, and it's corrupting the purity of the gentle spirit that I I wholeheartedly believe that should exist in the heart of every woman, every man for sure. But like,
Bingo.
there's a gentle spirit that you as a man you want. Like when you interact with your wife and I interact with mine, like you don't want it to always be like it's like it's like running up on sandpaper all the time. Every time you know what I'm saying. It's
Right.
it's it's always liver and onions or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It's always a rough go when you
Right.
so when you do that and you got kids watching and people watching, man, it's like there's a comedian. I don't listen to him much, but I remember back on Def Comedy Jam. His name was T.K. Kirkland. You know what I'm talking about?
I'll probably know him if I
That
see his
joke would be
face.
like, "Who raised you?" He always say like, "Who?" He would talk about something. Man, who raised you? And I think about like I see things just and I ain't old,
Right.
right? But I look at things. I'm like, man, who raised you? Who taught you that? Where you get that from?
Dude, it's like I think and just to conclude that little Facebook part, which basically I'm kind of like, one, why would you I don't understand why you would hit a kid for doing something that's perfectly developmentally normal.
That's because you're developmentally challenged. How you said developmentally challenged?
Uh,
You didn't develop properly.
Right, exactly. And all right, for example, my kid the other day, like he's in his no phase. He's in his no. You know how girls now they talk about they're in their soft light, soft light, soft. He's in his no phase right now.
What a girl saying?
They're in their soft phase or something. They've
I
come
have
out
no,
of this strong, independent, don't need a man for
I have
anything.
no
Now they're in
idea.
the soft phase.
I have no idea what
Yeah,
that is.
it's a soft life thing that they got because they, I guess, tired of being hard, so now they're being soft life. It's called soft life. Google it or TikTok it or Instagram it. It's called soft life. That's what they're doing. That's the trend now. Anyway, I don't know why they ever got off soft life, but that's a whole other podcast. But the point is, my son is in his no phase, right?
Okay.
So, according to this young lady's doctrine, I need to be hitting my kid.
Okay.
Because if he says no to me, that's a sign of disobedience. And you don't want a disobedient child because what if he's running across the street one day and you can't stop him? He's not going to listen to you if you don't hit him. Oh, okay. So if that's the case, why do you have to keep hitting your kid?
Instead of teaching them properly.
Well, what I'm saying is, if hitting was so effective, why do you have to keep doing it? Once should suffice. If your punishment style, your popping or your spanking was so effective, then you should only have to do it once in the life of that child, and he should be good, right? Because when I tell my son, he says no, and I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? You give me a better idea. I want to eat this knife. I don't think that's the best idea, buddy. Why don't you take these crackers or take these Cheerios? He loves Cheerios. So I'm always like, well, let me figure out a way to distract him, to satiate his desire. Sometimes he just wants attention. Sometimes he just wants to be left alone. Sometimes he just wants to play. Sometimes he's just freaking sleepy. But he doesn't have the word power to articulate that. So all he can say is no. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let me teach you how to say yes. That's my goal right now for this past like 4 months. I've been teaching how to say yes. So when I show him something, no. Okay, you want this? No. You want this? Yes. Like, boom. And then I give it to him and I reward him, right? Because I want to give him the word power so that he can express himself, so that he's not so frustrated, which then brings down the frustration level on me. But if you're not in that mindset where you understand that it's perfectly developmentally appropriate for a little 2-year-old to say no and not perceive that as some threat to your authority as a parent, something's seriously wrong with you. And you're going to hit him for doing something that's perfectly normal. Yeah. And I see this in a lot of older, like adolescent kids and stuff that I run into, where they just they don't have word power. They don't have and here's the thing. I'll say this last little rant and get off my high horse because my horse is tired. I need to go feed the high horse. Let's say, for example, you've basically broken your child's will at a
Mm-hmm.
young age, and you've made sure that he obeys all authority figures and is always obedient, never says no to adults, and you respect adults. That was the way I was raised, right? Respect all adults. Any adult that tells you anything is automatically right, and you as a child is wrong, and we're gonna beat you if you say anything against it, right? But let's flip that now, because we know that sexual SA, I'll say SA, is rampant. So what happens when this authority figure who you've told your child to always obey tells little Johnny, "Hey, come in this back room and let me da 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 da." Well, my mama told me always saying no is bad, and every time I say no at home, I got a beating. So let me obey this authority figure. And then the authority figure says, "Don't tell anybody." And because you've brainwashed your child into right into obeying all authority figures and never saying no
Right.
and never questioning anything, then all of a sudden they're in a place where they don't even have the mental capacity to stand up for their own body.
You you on my nerves right now because I'm ready to blow up in this joint. But because I think about it. Uh, you said a couple of things I want to touch on. Number one, I think that the things that we have that scenario about the abuse. The only and Peter might jump on me for this, but I don't care about y'all either. The only thing that you discipline that way to kind of break it, if you will, are animals, right? For them to do what you want. They're of
Mm,
service to us.
mm,
A wild horse or what,
mm.
so that you can ride it for your own purposes, whatever. So dogs, sledding dogs, things like that. But they have their own nature. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But there's something, and my wife taught me this. Shout out to you, babe. Because I've got a stepson who's 26 and stepdaughter 27. So she's been raising kids a lot longer than I have. I've got godsons intimately involved in their lives as well, very active, but I wasn't there. I'm not the parent, right? So only time I've ever been raising a child is Tay Ray. So I heard Chris Clark, one of the elders at church, was like a long time ago. He was talking about the natural spirit, the natural character, the natural everything that God put in these kids. It's not for us to break it. Like, it's for
Right.
us to identify what it is. The only way you can identify what the maker put in the creation is to really be in tune with what, let's just say, to read the manufacturer's
Right.
handbook, if you will, to figure out, like, oh, all right, this is what you gave me, this child to steward and to take care of, not to lord over, not to own, because ultimately it's God's. But okay, so it's up for me to figure out what's the character, what's the bent behind this little girl. How she move, and I'm not supposed to break that by my discipline, or
Mm,
I'm supposed to introduce discipline, because you can't do everything. Life ain't about the green lights, right? You
mm.
got to pay attention to the yellow and the red,
Right.
but
Right.
and all the signs are that are around the road of life. But but it's for me to figure out what's her natural bent, because I have an idea of what I want for my child, right? Of how I
Sure.
want her, and how you would like, in a sense, for him to be successful and things like that. But you ultimately don't know.
And she don't really care about what you think.
Correct. So she, as much as I might like Legos, and I think Legos are a great hand-eye
Sure.
coordination development tool, right? She might not like Legos,
Mm.
but if I see her picking up crayons, and she likes to be artistic, and she's always into slime and finger paints and things. Oh, she's very that way.
Right.
So I'm not gonna try to keep her outside doing, out playing with a basketball or whatever. And we can
Right.
do that too.
Right.
But if her natural bent is for me
Hmm.
to fan the flames of that, and if it's good, great, let's fan the flames of it. If she's bent towards something that is not good for her, then I need to introduce the discipline. It
Yeah.
doesn't require for me to break her,
Mm.
of that, but it's to show her this is the good. This is not so good,
Yeah.
and getting her to say yes to the good, and no to the bad, right? And introducing the disciplines. That's the introducing of the rod in a different form, right?
Mm.
And I think that there's such a lack of understanding of that principle because we want people to do what we want them to do for our own personal gain and comfort.
Yeah.
And raising a
Wow.
child ain't nothing comfortable about it.
It's nothing convenient about it.
There's
at
nothing
all.
convenient about it. But being married brings about a lot of conveniences and inconveniences, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, we're here to become better. And my belief is like all of this is put in my hands, put under my leadership, under my authority in ways for me to steward it and to make it look like what ultimately the creator put it in my hand. It should look like a certain thing when I present and when I'm doing my job, when I'm talking to clients, when my wife is, how she feels about me does it all reflect what God wants, what he
Right.
wanted? There was one, and I shut up after this. There was a guy that said, because in the Bible talks about the bride of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
the church being the bride of Christ, and marriage it should be a reflection of
Right. How Christ loved the church.
And the church as a whole, it should look more beautiful as time goes on than what it did on the wedding day.
Right.
Your bride should look more. After time has gone on, you've been married 10 years. Does she look more beat up after 10 years after having been married to me, or does she look more beautiful after 10 years of being married? And I was thinking, like, man, like I got to make sure that my marriage looks more beautiful, that my wife looks more beautiful, my family looks more beautiful, because I've been given a responsibility. My business looks more beautiful. My partners that I work with, is our relationship more beautiful after having worked together? All of the things. Are my clients more beautiful and more fruitful, and they can take that and pass that on to whoever they who they interact with? That's what I think like is missing in the world, in some of our immediate circles. But it's something that I take ownership in, and I get revelation of, like, yo, there's some ways I got to step up, and I want to be better. And all of this stuff that we were talking about today was, about like me recognizing that I've made an idol of the things instead of like making my affection singularly focused, and that's like looking to the Creator.
Dude, that's hot. This is a different episode, man.
It is.
This is who we are. This is me and Marcus, man. This is the type of stuff that we always talk about, man. We're very deeply spiritual people. If you work with us, that's where we're coming from, yo. We're not in it for, we do want money, but it ain't about selfish gain without a win-win. Leaving people in a better condition, like you said, than when we found them.
Yeah.
And that's our ultimate goal, yo. Yep. Follow us, man, on the Real Estate Wire podcast on all platforms. Yep. Check us out on Dan Wheeler Sells Homes /podcast to check out the Real Estate Wire. Like, subscribe, and share this video with anybody that you might think is dope.
Yeah.
Where can they find you, Coach?
At Mortgage Coach Marcus and at Fields Mortgage Group.
And I'm Dan Wheeler at Dan Wheeler Sells Homes is my email. And I'm Dan Wheeler Sells Homes on all platforms.
That's 2 weeks in a row you messed it up.
In case you want to email me. For all of us here at the Real Estate Wire, we are out.